Welcome to the Spirit Sisters podcast, where we gather around the virtual hearth to share sacred stories, our spiritual experiences, our life journeys. These are stories from the heart, very human stories. I'm Karina Machado, and my life's passion is to share these sacred stories that remind us that we are more than our bodies. Today I have a special bonus episode for you. I usually only release an episode a month, but I really wanted to get this interview out before the end of the year. And having seen your wonderful response to my last episode, my interview with Jodie, who shared her life journey as a, in some ways, reluctant medium, a person with the gift, and she talked about how she'd found her way towards coming to terms with the gift and really anchoring into the service element of it, that she wanted to help the spirits that come to her, to help them cross over. So given the enthusiasm for that episode, I thought it would be great to release this bonus episode, which is my interview with a woman who has been operating as a psychic medium for 60 years. Her name is Noela McBlane. She's an Australian psychic medium, and as you're about to hear in this interview, Noela is one of the most kind and humble, open-hearted people I feel that I've ever met. Her level of generosity towards her community, and that is, her community is vast, it's anybody who contacts her for help essentially. Her level of generosity towards people who need spiritual support, who perhaps have lost a loved one and are in the depths of despair. Noela is absolutely unbelievable in terms of what she offers and her kindness. And in this interview, I think you'll really get a sense of that, and her readiness, her willingness to share her long and fascinating life journey. Now, Noela has, with the support of a dear friend, Kate, who is the person who initially alerted me to Noela's story, Noela has written a book called An Unexpected Clairvoyant, Stories of Noela McBlane, and I will link to this in the show notes. And it's a little volume, but it's packed with experiences and astonishing stories, many of which Noela shares with us in this episode today. So I hope you enjoy my conversation with Noela McBlane, beautiful woman and a very authentic human being. If you're enjoying Spirit Sisters, please remember to like, share and subscribe. It really helps these stories to get out to the people who need to hear them and the most. This episode with Noela is also audio only for some technical reasons, but I hope that you can still enjoy it. Hi Noela, welcome to Spirit Sisters.
Hi Karina, thank you for speaking with me today.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the show to share your extraordinary life journey with us. I know that the audience is going to really enjoy hearing about your life and your stories and your experiences with your mediumship, which is, I know, something that you've had your entire life.
Yes, and it's something that I love too, because I'm just able to help so many people with that. And when we lose loved ones, we're always wondering, if they're safe and is everything okay. And it just settles people down and just lets them know that our loved ones that pass away never forget us. They do come to visit us, but they're not with us 24/7. They have to go to rest, but they're still looking in on us and looking after us and, just wanting us to make the right decisions, but we don't always listen.
Yeah, yes, indeed. And we're going to talk more about all of that. And how I thought we could begin, I have read your book, An Unexpected Clairvoyant, Stories of Noela McBlane, that your lovely friend Kate has written with you, for you and with you. Kate was the one who actually got in touch with me to alert me about your story. So I'm very grateful to Kate. And in your book, you tell the story of being just a little toddler of 2 and seeing spirits. Tell us about that. Maybe let's begin here, right back at the beginning.
Okay, yes, that's a good spot to start from the beginning. I may have been younger than 2. I really don't know exactly how old I was, but I was still sucking my thumb. I was still very tiny and sleeping in between my mother and father at night. Often I'd lay awake and I'd look at these things just floating around the room, and I didn't know what they were. I wasn't frightened of them because I was too young to be frightened, but I was very interested in them, and they were like cigarette smoke. You know, when you see people blow a puff of cigarette smoke into the air, they were that colour. But as I got older, I realised they were in the shape of seahorses. There was quite a few floating around, but when I think about it, I think it could have been past loved ones floating around and just coming in to see if everything was okay.
And seahorses, Nola, when you say that, I think of a very enchanted, beautiful creature, a rare and lovely, lovely animal on our earth. Do you feel that your loved ones might have been appearing to you in that shape because you're this tiny little baby and it's something comforting? What are your thoughts around the seahorse imagery?
Well, the seahorse image, I didn't start thinking about that until Kate was helping me to write my book. And I said to Kate one day, I'm just wondering what seahorses mean. So, of course, I Googled it and I looked that up, and it's a very spiritual thing to see. I thought to myself, well, you know, even though I could feel loved ones around me, with the seahorses, I think it was just spirits just trying to educate me and to inform me that they were there, and it was just their way, I think, of drawing my attention, because even though I was so young, if my mother took me for a little walk down the street, I'd be pointing out different houses where people had just recently died. One house, about 4 or 5 houses down from us, we were walking past that, and I said to my mother, man dead in there. And she goes, oh no, he's okay, he's fine, he's just inside. 2 days later, the ambulance and the police and everyone was there. He'd been laying inside dead.
Oh, my goodness. So that's a story that your mum would have shared with you later.
Yes, she
Yeah.
did. And just little things like that I didn't give another thought. And I didn't give anything like that too much thought until I was around about 13.
Okay, because that's what I was going to ask you next, Nola. How did your gifts go on to develop throughout your childhood? And how did you
Yeah.
feel about what you were experiencing?
Yes,
So
okay.
as a 13-year-old, okay, what happened?
Right, well, I'll go back a little bit. By the time I was 5 years old, I'd had an accident and I slowly lost the use of my arms and legs. And because I was completely paralysed, I couldn't even move my head from side to side. I was being fed through tubes. All my muscles went on me. And I was spending 20 months in one hospital, 10 months in another hospital, and in artificial breathing apparatuses, you know, double pneumonia, all this sort of thing. And while this was all going on, until I was about 11, I could hear this beautiful, gentle male voice talking to me, but I couldn't work out what he was saying. And sometimes I got a little bit worried, thinking, I hope he's not telling me to do anything bad. I hope he's a nice person, you know. He never stopped talking to me. And then he showed himself to me when I was in Camperdown Children's Hospital. There was a chair beside my bed, And my parents could only come to visit me of a weekend because they lived in Newcastle and there wasn't a lot of money around in the 50s. My father was a coal miner and there was a lot of strikes going on at the time. But anyway, this old man used to sit on this chair beside my bed, and he had long white gowns on and long white hair and a long white beard. I just started calling him God, and he was giving me messages and he was telling me I would walk again, not to worry. So when my parents would come to visit, I'd tell them not to worry about me, that I was going to walk again. I even was telling some of the doctors not to worry, everything would be all right, I'll walk again. My mother asked me, how I knew that. And I said, well, God sits on that chair and he tells me everything's going to be okay, that I'll walk again. And actually, I wouldn't let my mother sit on that chair because that was God's chair. By the time I was 11, the professors and specialists from the hospital sent me home with my mother and father and saying I'd never ever walk again. I'd always be in a wheelchair. And I knew I would walk again, but I've had to learn how to walk from crawling stage. I still don't have much balance at all, and I've had just about every bone in my body broken because of that. I'm still walking, even though I've had a lot of broken bones and broken back and my pelvis broken in 4 places and a lot of illness. I'm still walking, and I always will be.
Such a harrowing experience you went through as such a little one. And I've got a couple of things that I wanted to touch on there. One is, firstly, I'd love to know from your perspective, 6 decades later, roughly, who do you think that was sitting in your chair?
I feel that I'm still not quite sure. I still believe that it was God giving me messages, because my mother was teaching me about God from a very early age, as soon as I could understand her teachings. But I also feel that my spirit guide was stepping in as well. And I think while I was paralysed and not getting any visitors, it was like a schooling for me. I think I was being taught the spiritual path, to have faith and to... I always cared about other people and their feelings and tried to help other people even as a child. I just thought it was my teachings.
Very interesting, because over the many years that I've been researching and writing about this and speaking to many different people like yourself, Nola, who've had these experiences, some things come out as common denominators. And often with mediums, I have noted a very challenging background in terms of illness, in terms of accident, in terms of bodily restriction.
I really feel that the fact that I couldn't be physical after the age of 5 and play and run and jump like other children, I was being taught to be spiritual. So it was like a schooling for me, a spiritual school, because I could not be physical. If I hadn't have been paralysed, I would have been running and jumping and trying to fly like a bird, like I used to before I was 5 years of age, and not taken a lot of notice of the spiritual.
Very good point, because you would have been much more immersed in the physical world, in the physical realm. Yeah, that's very interesting. And Nola, you mentioned that you were learning from your mum, and I was wondering about the spiritual tradition that you were born into and how that might have impacted you.
Oh, no, she didn't speak of clairvoyance, or what they used to call them in the 50s, fortune tellers, although she did visit a clairvoyant a couple of times to find out from them what was wrong with me, what they thought might have been wrong with me. They didn't really know, but no, it was just a very normal, old-fashioned upbringing. I was taught to believe in God and to be a kind person, good person, but there was no talk of clairvoyance or anything like that in the home.
And so as a little girl, did you feel that you could freely share these experiences with your family that you were having?
No,
Okay,
no.
yeah.
I didn't, because right up until I was about 11, I thought that it was just normal, that everyone saw things and knew things. I didn't question it. That was just me, and I didn't know that I was any different to anyone else, you know.
Okay. And you mentioned earlier something that happened at around 13. I was wondering if you could share what that story was.
Oh, yes. My auntie from Sydney came up to Newcastle to visit the family, and she was all excited, saying she'd been to a clairvoyant in Sydney a few days beforehand, and Mum made a cup of tea and we sat at the table. My auntie was telling us all of these things, and I said, oh, goodness me, I'd love to be able to do that. And she said to me, you can. And with that, she took off her gold watch and handed it to me, and instructed my mother to get a pen and paper so she could write things down. And my mother was having a little bit of a giggle every now and then, you know, saying, oh, you're going a bit overboard, aren't you, with the messages I was giving her. But everything came true. Even the house she bought in the country, I described the colour carpet and what it would look like with little pink rosebuds on it, that'd have half the front veranda done in as a sunroom, that an old boyfriend of hers that was a dentist would give her $30,000. Well, it wouldn't have been dollars, it would have been pound in those days. I was a little bit wrong with that. He lent her £20,000. But I told her so many things, and she said they all came true. The only thing, I was a little bit out with the money. He didn't give her quite as much as I thought he would.
You were very close, though, and that's a lot of information to come out of a
Yeah.
young girl.
I even mentioned the narrow staircase up to his dental surgery and the aqua blue plastic chairs in the waiting room. And she said, oh, yes, that's what it's exactly like that, you know.
It's amazing. And if it's okay, I might reference a story in your book again because it was one that really struck me. And it
Yeah.
was about the spirit guide that appeared to you first when you were very little, Charles Stanton. You later,
Yes.
you later ascertained that it was this person. But I was wondering if you
Yeah.
could share with us, because it's a story that spans about 3 decades, because something happened
Yeah.
when you were giving birth that identified this person for you. If you could share that with us, please, Nola.
Yes, I first saw him when I was 5 years old, and he shows himself to me every 5 years. Starts off on the bedroom wall like a speck of dust, and as that speck of dust travels around the room, it becomes larger and larger and larger, like a torchlight. And then I see him standing beside my bed. He has a white shirt on, a black tie, a white doctor's coat, and he has a little black goatee beard and black piercing eyes and short jet black hair. And he's just looking at me, and he only looks at me for a short time, because when I was younger I'd stick my head under the blankets and now I just close my eyes and turn over. But I was in the hospital for a few weeks to give birth to my 10-pound baby boy, and having a lot of trouble giving birth. He was too big for me. Anyway, this lady in the bed opposite me kept looking at me, and I was thinking, I wonder what's wrong, you know, why is she looking at me like that? Until one day she apologised and she said, I hope you don't mind me telling you, she said, but she told me she was a clairvoyant, and she told me that she could see this doctor standing beside my bed, and he was sort of wiping his hands clean off me, saying, "Don't worry, everything's going to be okay." And everything did turn out to be okay, but the way she described him, I knew that that was Charles. And Charles is still with me until even today, you know, right up until today.
So, how did you know he was Charles? Because I'm just looking here in your book and it says he told you his name was Charles.
He
Is that
told
right?
me he spoke to me, and when I was possibly in my 20s, it wouldn't have been before then, he told me his name.
Okay. And then what I'm finding extra fascinating about this already fascinating story is that you didn't say anything about this vision that was coming to you and this man who identified himself as Charles. But when you were in your 30s, you did say something to your mum, and that's when she told you that Charles Stanton was her great grandfather. Is that right, Nola?
Yes, I think it was about three greats right back.
Okay.
He was a medical doctor.
And your mum knew that this man was in her heritage.
Yes, because I'm not sure if he was two great grandfathers back or three, but her cousin had a photo of him,
Okay.
and the photo of him was in his doctor's coat, and he was actually Spanish, had Spanish blood, Spanish and English blood in him.
Okay. And he had
Yeah.
that little dark beard that you saw
Yes, yes,
and the
and
white coat, white
the
doctor's coat.
skin wasn't real dark, but it was like a honey colour, you know.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, so he was Spanish and English.
Okay. Is he still present in your life, this ancestor guide?
I don't communicate with him very often. I'm a bit lazy in that way. I just take it for granted that he's there. It was funny, about 20 years ago, I just was not communicating with him at all. And in my mind, I could see him polishing his shoes and getting all dressed up. And I thought, where's he going? And a clairvoyant friend of mine rang me and she said, guess who's here with me? And I said, who? She said, Charles is here with me. He's left you.
He moved
And
on.
I laughed and I said, oh my goodness, that's because I haven't been communicating with him. I said, could see him shining his shoes.
It's
And
getting
after
ready.
a few days, he came back. But I do tend to get a little bit blasé and a little bit lazy with my communication to my guides. I definitely do.
But something that strikes me as something I'd like to ask you about as we talk about Charles and how he went to do some other work is this idea that spirit people have work to do and they have tasks and they have a purpose and duties that they're attending to on the other side. What can you share with us around that, Nola?
Definitely, they're very busy people, and they definitely have work to do on the other side, and actually have a life on the other side. And as I'm saying this, I'm going very goose pimply, my both arms and even my neck. A cousin of mine that died when I was 16, and he was only 15. He was a very sporty type of a person, and he came to visit me in spirit one night when I was asleep, and he had all this white tennis gear on, a tennis racket in his hand, and just said hello and was smiling, and then he waved to me and he disappeared. And I didn't say anything for about, must have been 12 months, and my sister, that's 13 years older than me, she said to me, I had a visit from Lenny a few months ago. She said, and he looked as though he was playing tennis. And I said, well, I didn't say anything, but that's how he was dressed when I saw him. And just different things like that, that I do really feel that they're very busy and they carry on their work, and even more so than when they're on earth. I believe they go up a level and they do become very, very spiritual, And I've got so many stories. I could talk until midnight about things that are not in the book, that there's so many stories all the time. I'm adding to them, you know.
Why don't you pluck out a favourite and share? So this is a story from your work as a clairvoyant medium speaking with
Well,
clients, or yeah.
also along with that, I'm also a psychic healer and I'm also a psychic counsellor as well. And I do break out in bruises and scratches and sores, and I have pain, and I have an awful lot going on when I'm doing a reading for people. Not everyone, but only people that need more attention. It doesn't happen with every person. Just one special story. Oh, there's so many special stories, but one that it's been on my mind for a little while. I was at a birthday party 3 years ago, and I was sitting next to a man that was telling me that he had a brain tumour, and the doctors wouldn't operate on it because it was too dangerous. And I said to him, he'd been to me once before. He knew I was clairvoyant, but I don't think he knew I was a medium or a healer. And I said, no, look, I want you to have that operation. I said, they're going to change their mind and they're going to ask for your permission to operate. I want you to do that. I said, because they'll get it all. I said, and everything's going to be okay. And I said, the first thing when you come out of recovery that you'll notice is your wife walking in through the door with a big smile on her face. And he put it on Facebook only about 2 months ago that he was celebrating his 3 years of health since his operation. He did say that the first thing he saw when he opened his eyes was his wife coming towards him with a big smile on her face, as I had said. He actually rang me and told me, but he didn't include that in his post. But he's celebrating his 3 years of being healthy. And there's so many stories like that. People that's been rushed to hospital. They've rang me from hospital when the doctors haven't been able to find out what was wrong with them, and I've told them what was wrong with them, and it ends up that's the way it is. But it's not my ability, it's Charles, my guide, the doctor. I'm just the messenger.
It comes through you.
It comes through me. When I'm sitting doing readings for people, it's their guides telling me what they need to know. And some people I have to be a little bit careful with, that they're very emotional at times. So I have to be careful what I say to people. I never ever want anyone to leave my home upset and crying because they're worried about what I've said. I have to be very careful and just monitor what I can say and what I can't say.
That sensitivity that you bring to your work. It's a duty of care for your
I'm not
client.
here to scare the living daylights out of people and for them to have a car accident or something on the way home, you know. And that's why I did just a basic counselling course, and that helped me because I was already a psychic counsellor. I just seem to transfer my spirit into the person that I'm reading. So I know if they're nervous, I know if they're, the type of person that worries about things. I sort of become them for a little while.
That's interesting. Because when you first mentioned the term psychic counsellor, I thought, oh, what is that?
Yes, it's just talking to people in an understanding way and not lecturing people. Well, sometimes I do lecture. Sometimes I do lecture people if they need to be lectured. Like, look, if I see someone driving drunk or erratically, I don't say you're going to have a car accident. I'll say, if you don't want to have a car accident, you're going to have to change the way you drive. Don't continue to drink and drive, or don't continue to do this or that, you know. So you've got to just be a little bit gentle
I see what you're saying now. So psychic counsellor is a merging of your psychic abilities with counselling.
With counselling, yes,
Yeah.
just with care
Mm.
and not wanting to worry people or frighten people.
I think that's very wise to merge those two spaces, because so many people will perhaps not go to see a professional counselor or a therapist, but they will go to a psychic. And so to have a psychic who has training in counseling, I think that makes a lot of sense.
I have a handful of clients that have been coming to me for over 10 years, and they say, I come to see you because I get a counsellor and a clairvoyant all for the price of one.
It's a good deal. I like it.
That's what they say, it's a good deal. But then they go on to lecture me because they say I don't charge enough.
So while we're talking about your work, one thing I'm curious about, Nola, is whether you have worked your entire life in this space of psychic counseling, clairvoyance, or whether you did have at any time kind of conventional jobs, and perhaps also what you wanted to be as a little girl when you grew up.
Before I lost the use of my arms and legs, I really wanted to be a bird and fly.
I love that.
That's up until I was 5. I tried and tried to run as fast as I could and flap my arms so I could fly like a bird. Never worked out. So that was the main thing on my mind until I was 5. Now I spend an awful lot of time in hospital with double pneumonia, in artificial breathing apparatus, and a lot of the times I was, I don't know, just sick and not thinking
Mm,
about anything and just wondering what these voices were and who these people were that were showing themselves to me. When I grew up, I was an assistant, not a chef, but a cook. I worked in like a resort,
oh,
cooking for 150 people at a time with the head chef. That's the main thing. And then I
okay.
was married by the time I was 19. But
Married, did you say, by the time you were
by
19?
the time I was 19, I was married, and I was married for 2 years before I had my first baby. But I was in 2 different relationships, and I didn't mention it in my book, but very, very violent relationships, so that I've had a broken back and different things wrong. I used to be strangled until I passed out and
Oh,
thrown
gosh.
across the room, and very violent relationships.
Both of them.
Yes, both of them.
I'm so
And then,
sorry about to hear
yeah,
that, Nola. Yeah.
extremely, extremely violent. Didn't put that in my book because I don't like to put people down, and it's in the past and it's over and done with.
Mm. Nola, at that time, well, I guess what I'm trying to get a sense of is, was there a moment in your life when you knew that this path as a clairvoyant, you simply had to embrace it, that this was going to be your life's work and your purpose here?
Well, it sort of came and went. When I was 13, I did my first party for 9 ladies, and I turned up at the lady's house and didn't know what on earth to do or what these ladies expected of me, but they sat me in a room on my own and came in to me one at a time, half an hour at a time, and they were all laughing and so happy, and I was dumbfounded why they were so happy at what I was telling them, and just doing odd readings for my relations, cousins, and they were the ones that told this lady a few streets away about me. And then, I was busy being a mum and only did a couple of readings here and there. But I also looked after my father for 10 years that had a very bad lung disease from working in the mines. And in the book, I said he was a coal miner, but he was also an ambulance man in the mines, and he was a deputy, which is a lower grade boss in the mines. But I looked after him for 10 years, so I sort of just brushed that aside and had my children to look after and my father to look after. And then when he passed away when I was about 36, I had a lot of calls from the radio station wanting me to come in and work as a clairvoyant and do a show. And each time I said no. My mother used to say to me, what if you get things wrong? What if they laugh at you? And what if this and what if that? By the time I was about 46, my mother developed dementia, and my older sisters wanted to put her into a nursing home, but I took her home with me to live with me, and she lived with me and for almost 5 years until she died. And at the time I had a 3-kilo tumour in my stomach, and I had my 2 teenagers to look after and my partner's 3 teenagers to look after.
A lot on your plate you had in those days.
Yeah, so 5 children between the ages of 13 and 17. But then at night I did a counselling course, and it was a criminal psychologist that taught us, and it was so interesting, and he wanted me to go on to university and do a psychology course, and I did. I went and filled papers in and everything, but it was around that time that I felt I had to take my mother on and do the right thing by her, so I didn't bother. And then once my mother died, about 3 months after my mother died, when I was 52 years old, I got a phone call from the local radio station at Sandgate, and they wanted me for 3 weeks to advertise a certain gift shop. So I had to have an interview with them first of all. So I went in one afternoon and sat in the office with 4 men in suits, and they wanted short readings. So I was very, very honest, and they went very red in the face after a few minutes and said, that will do. No more information. Apparently one was stalking his wife that he'd just broken up with, and another one was drinking too much, and of course I told them. But the shock of their life, that will do. No, I don't want to hear any more. And be here tomorrow night at 9 o'clock, they said. So I was on air from 9 o'clock till 12, and it was supposed to be for 3 weeks, and I was there for nearly about 6 years.
And what were you doing in that time? Giving readings?
I was doing readings. Yeah. I'd go in at 9 o'clock on a Wednesday night, and I was there till midnight, and I'd sit there and people would ring me. We had a full board. The phone held about 12 calls. We had a full board the whole time, and we'd be crying 1 minute, laughing the next. I loved it. It was so much fun. And then, of course, I was invited to go to other radio stations such as Zoo FM at Dubbo, and even in 2HD next door in the studio next door to where I worked. And I left to do some restaurant work and other things,
There's one thing that, as I'm listening to you, I picked up on and thought I'd ask you about that I hadn't considered before. But when you mentioned that you were trained by I think you said a criminologist?
Yes.
Yes, I was thinking about crime cases and, unsolved cases that we might see, high-profile ones, and if your work has ever taken you into that realm of understanding what's happened.
Yes, only sitting at home on my lounge. I have been right with the outcome so far, but there was one that I picked up so much. I've got to be very careful with that.
Of course.
I will be careful. I'm not going to name names or anything like that, but the guy that I felt killed this person, I got his nickname and where he worked and where the deceased person was, and also his parents and where he went to school, and so much about him. And I was talking a little bit about it at a private party I was doing, just to two ladies, and one lady gasped and she went white in the face, and I said, "What's wrong? Have I said the wrong thing?" She said, "No, I live in that suburb." She said, and because I said this man drank at a certain hotel, she said, "He is the manager of that hotel, and that is his nickname." And I thought for my own safety I had to let it go, but not before walking along this certain bush track and with another clairvoyant friend of mine. And as we got into the bush track, I heard this voice sing out, "Noah," sing out my name like that. And my friend next to me, she heard it too. We grabbed onto each other. And I said, "Did you hear that?" She said, "Yes." And we both had goosebumps on it. I said, "Quick, let's go to McDonald's for lunch." Then cleared of it, I had page after page after page of information. And I was talking to a detective, and he was going to come and interview me, but I was in the middle of moving house at the time. He was about to go on holidays. I was friends with a certain mayor and mayoress at the time, and they were friends with a detective. But when I found out I had all of this information, I thought, no, I've got to let this go for my own safety. My grown-up son said to me, "Mum," because he was like, he thought he was my carer, I think. He thought he was my father. He goes, "Mum, you're not going to do it." And he goes, "Because you think everyone's nice. Not everyone's as nice as you think they are." He was always warning me that people weren't as nice as I thought they were. And I said, "Well, I can't treat everyone that comes to me as if they were a criminal." I said, "I'm too trusting. I'm probably a little bit naive. I'm not streetwise. I mean, what I've told you about my life is all I've done about, I haven't done anything, haven't been overseas on my own or that. My life's been pretty basic, really. I think my life's fairly basic."
Well, you say basic, Nola, but you have this extraordinary gift that is supporting so many grieving people to heal.
Yeah,
And that's something
yeah.
that not everybody can offer to somebody who is in those depths of grief. And just on that, so what role do you believe that clairvoyance and mediumship play in that healing process? How is it that you help people? Tell us about that, and maybe you can share some stories of when a client experienced peace or transformation through one of your messages.
Look, it's a little bit, it's not straightforward. There are the odd clairvoyant/medium out there that just say anything to fill in the time. There's the odd one that frightens people and worries people. I've been told that I used to be a, a mermaid in the past life and all sorts of things. I think you've got to be very careful who you see, and you also have to be a little bit alert of what people are telling you, and you have to have that common sense to divide the information up into something sensible. I think you could walk away from a clairvoyant/medium very, very worried. A friend of mine, she's more of an acquaintance, she's a good friend of a friend of mine, went to a medium 2 years ago, and that medium is very well known and frightened the living daylights out of her, so much so that lovely, very intelligent lady that has a very good job and very academically minded, she's more or less been a recluse since that reading and started to become a hoarder,
Oh no.
but also believing the silly things that this clairvoyant is saying and following her and wanting another reading from her and just caught up with her. And yet what she's telling this lady is nothing but negativity and worrying the living daylights out of her.
That is a cautionary tale if I've ever heard one, and it's very alarming to think that that is a high-profile medium who might be getting a lot of clients,
She is.
and if this is the experience with the acquaintance that that's restricted and constricted her life, and that is very alarming.
Yes. And she told this lady that there's 3 parts to our life, and this lady's on the last part of her life, and she won't be here for that much longer.
Oh gosh, I'm so sorry to hear that for that person,
Yes,
and thank you for alerting. I think it's an important point to bring up because people experiencing grief are vulnerable,
they are very vulnerable.
Yeah, so
And
I appreciate you
I
sharing.
look, I can only speak for myself, and I know there's a lot of good clairvoyants and a lot of good mediums out there. There'd be a lot that's so much better than I am, and I just do my best. That's all. I haven't had a lot of schooling because of my illness, and I just do my best to try to help people. But I feel that you've got to have some sense of responsibility when you're doing readings for people, when you're speaking to people, not to frighten them. It's my responsibility to help that person that comes and sits with me. It's my responsibility not to frighten them. I just get so angry with clairvoyance that frighten people, and I think, well, if you don't have the ability to just do a proper reading, stop frightening people with rubbish.
Yes, yes, thank you for that. And while we're talking about what happens in a consultation like this or a session, I was wondering if you do have a positive and lovely story from your files, from your case files, Nola, about a moment when a client experienced joy or at least a moment of peace through something that you've shared with them.
Well, there's so many of them. I should have. I've got quite a few books that I jot things down in, and I should have had a quick look, but I've been out renewing my license and everything all morning,
That's
and I
okay.
always leave everything till last minute. I don't know if that's a Capricorn trait or not, but there's been so many lovely things that make people feel so good. It's like I have people coming to me saying, I used to go to a psychiatrist until I met you, or I used to
Mm,
go to a counsellor until I met you. I also have people ringing me a lot on Christmas Day because they're lonely. I also have people ringing me because they've dreamt that I've died, and who am I going to have to talk to if you die?
Oh,
And I
Nola,
assure them
I get
it's
a
not my
sense
time.
I get a sense that you're like Lifeline, to a lot
I
of
know.
people, and it sounds like, and I'm still getting to know you, but it sounds like you are very available, and you
Yeah.
go above and beyond, I think.
I get phone calls and messages at 2 and 3 and 4 in the morning. Even people just wanting to book in for a reading might send me a message at 4 in the morning, and I'm on the phone quite often till 12 o'clock at night. Sometimes I don't have my dinner at night till 9 or 10 o'clock because I'm on the phone. I do a lot of free readings. I do a lot of counselling on the phone. I have clients that we laugh and laugh an awful lot. I laugh a lot with people because that's healing as
Mm.
well. But in between all that, when I haven't got anyone booked in, I'm just me and just I don't think about it. It's just me. It's like the colour of our hair or the colour of our eyes. It's just who we are. It's nothing special.
you reminded me of something that I did want to ask about in terms of your connections with people when you are talking to them face to face. Remember you mentioned spiritual tears?
Yes,
Yeah, could
yes,
you
I
share about
do.
that? I think the audience would be interested to hear about what your definition of
Yeah.
spiritual tears and how they appear in your sessions.
I have spiritual tears a lot, and I do have both men and women coming to me that haven't cried for a long time. They keep their grief or their anger on the inside, and when I'm talking to them or counselling them, I start to cry, and then they'll start to cry and they excuse themselves for crying. And one lady many years ago said, I haven't cried for 10 years. I'm sorry to make you cry, she said, but I haven't cried for so long. And I said, don't worry about me. These are spiritual tears. I'm happy. I'm not crying. They're spiritual tears. And I do find that I have spiritual tears a lot. It's just to help the person that's sitting with me get in tune with their emotions and have a cry and let out their grief while they're feeling safe with me.
That's really beautiful, I think, especially when, as you shared, that lady hadn't cried for years and years and
Yeah.
years, and it's blocked up. And with you, it can emerge in, as you say, a safe space.
Yes, it can, because I started off by crying. I started off by crying, and look, I've had big burly coal miners sitting crying like babies, and I have quite a few police officers come to me for readings, doctors. I sit telling, without knowing at first they're a doctor, I sit telling them what their health issues are, even their relations from overseas, their health issues. And the last one that came to me only a couple of months ago, at the end of the reading, she goes, of course you know I'm a medical doctor, don't you? I went, oh my goodness, no, I'm so sorry. And she goes, no, you were 100% right.
And Nola, what would you say? Because I'm certain that today in our audience there are lots of people listening who might have lost a loved one, and they're in grief because they yearn for a sign of connection from their loved one, but they've never received it. What would you say to them?
Well, I feel there will always be a sign eventually, but the sicker our loved one is when they pass away, the longer it tends to take, because I do believe they go to a spiritual hospital for healing.
Hmm.
And those signs can be something very, very small. It can be the smell of a perfume. It could be the perfume that their grandmother used to wear when she was going out, or the room could fill with cigarette smoke. My father was a heavy smoker, so when he comes to give me a message, the room fills with cigarette smoke. It's also the same that if I don't do any readings for a few weeks, I then start finding 20-cent pieces around everywhere. There might be one laying on my bed. There might be one on the floor near the toilet. There might be one on the road when I get out of my car, and I feel that's a sign from my father. Don't worry, people haven't forgotten you. There's these clients coming, and because sometimes I'm a little bit hard up for money, because I do a lot of free readings for people.
Mm.
If people seem to me that they really need help and they don't have a lot of money. At times I've taken food when people leave my house. I'll go shopping and buy food and drop food off to them, or clothing, and I'll go to the op shop and buy babies' clothes and children's clothes and come home and wash them and iron them and take them and give them to people. And even clothes, I'll go to my wardrobe and say, oh, here, would you like this? I haven't worn it. It's, all that sort of thing. And so I do get great pleasure out of doing that. It makes me feel that I'm helping people a little bit. So
And
I just go with the flow. If I'm needed and people knock on my door or they ring me, I'm always there. But if they don't need me, I don't push myself onto people. There are just many beautiful stories. And of course, after all these years, they all tend to run into each other. It's hard to remember certain ones. That's why I've got a few books. I've got enough material there for about another half a dozen books. But I really appreciate my good friend Kate. She's so beautiful for helping me to write that book. I'm in awe of her. Such a lovely lady. I don't know. I just take things as they come. I don't advertise. It's just word of mouth and just take it as it comes, you know.
I'm so happy that lovely Kate could help you with your book, because you give so much, you know. And the other thing that strikes me about you is that you have lived experience of deep grief too, and which I was reading about in your book. And you lost your son Chad in 2017, and I was wondering if you feel, if it's okay with you, Nola, how you would feel about sharing a little bit about Chad, because he had psychic gifts too.
And he had very strong psychic ability, and I would say stronger than me, but it went in a different direction. He used to predict superstorms, and he would predict them a couple of years in advance, and he'd say, Mum, I'd like you to write this down for me. And one just off the top of my head, one of many that he predicted just the year that he died, was a firestorm. And I think it was about the 11th or 12th of February, 2017. And he said it'd be up around Dunedoo and Dubbo, and it would kill a lot of farm animals, and he gave me all sorts of information. And that firestorm did happen exactly on that date. And that wasn't long before he died. Then he predicted a very, very bad flood in Japan for that same year. And he said, a big factory would be floating down the street as though it's floating down a big river, you know, enormous factory. Well, by the time that storm happened, and we saw it on the news that night, this big factory floating down this street and houses, my son had died. But he used to worry about me a lot doing readings for people, because I'd invite everyone in. The door was always open, and he thought I was trusting to a certain extent, but he worried about me, you know, in that way. He wanted me to work for the police. He said, it'd be safer for you to work with the police. He said he didn't trust me to make the right decision.
Have you had experiences of sensing Chad's presence around you?
I have an awful lot, yes. From time to time, it's mainly I'll dream that he's there, you know, and he'll walk in through the door, and in my dream I go, oh, Chad, you're home. And I'll put my hand out to touch him on the arm, and he just fades away. But he does give me messages. I was travelling to Bathurst. I was going with my youngest daughter to visit my oldest daughter just about 4 months after Chad died. And we're driving along, you know, and my youngest daughter said, oh, Mum, we've put our handbags in the boot of the car and we've got to stop halfway there to get something to eat. And I said, oh, that's okay, we'll find it. Well, then came floating through the air from nowhere was a $50 bill. Just landed on the console between the two of us, and I'm goose pimply as I'm saying this, and I went, oh, there's $50 there. That must be your $50, is it? Because my money's in my purse, you know. And she goes, no, I don't carry cash. I've just got my card. and we could not work out where it come from, but we just saw it as it landed on the console between the two of us.
That's extraordinary. Do you feel that was Chad just shouting you lunch?
I do. That's what we both thought. We thought, well, that's the weirdest thing, because we're thinking of all the different scenarios.
Yeah.
And I mean, I wouldn't have just had $50 floating around in the car, and neither would she, because she still doesn't use cash. She only uses card.
That is a beautiful story, and it's an upbeat one. It's an upbeat story.
Different things
Yeah.
just little things, and just safety things. Like I might be driving along, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, my car doors will lock. Or I do tend to sometimes go a little bit faster than I should. And when that happens, I see all this lightning flashing around my car.
Oh, well, just like Chad looked after you in life, he's still looking after you.
Oh, he is, and all the family,
Mm.
He's very, very family orientated.
That's lovely. Thank you for
Yeah.
sharing that. And one thing I wondered too, because having that lived experience, I wondered how it affects your work and your readings, having experienced that deep personal loss.
Well, it was a deep personal loss when my parents died. I was very close to my parents after looking after them. And since then, I've lost my oldest sister that was 15 years older than me. My two brother-in-laws that were like two fathers to me, because they were both 16, 17 years older than me.
Yes.
I've had a lot of loss and a lot of close friends I've lost throughout life. Well, losing Chad was certainly a very heavy blow, but it was only 3 weeks after my relationship broke up. My son died only 3 weeks after that. So I've had to try to get a house together and, table and chairs and lounge and that. But I couldn't have any more than 2 days off work. At the time when my son died, I was working doing readings at Angels on the Lake. I could only have 2 days off work because I had to work to earn money to pay for his funeral. So I haven't sort of had time to grieve. I've only had little windows here and there.
I see, Nola. You've gone through so very much.
Yes, I know, but I just feel God is there with me and Spirit is with me, and I've got some absolutely beautiful friends that are very genuine friends.
I'm happy to hear that. I'm happy that you have support around you at this time.
I have a lot of support.
Well, Nola, we are coming to the end of our conversation.
Okay.
Yes,
So,
I'm nearly ready to wrap up, but one thing I'd love to just ask you is, looking back on your 6 decades of being a bridge between our world and the next, what wisdom from the spirit world do you carry close to your heart that perhaps you call on when you're going through something difficult, as you have been? What do you call on that they've shared with you to prop you up?
I actually don't feel that I have to call on anything. I feel they gather around me when I need them, because I have a lot of inner strength, and I never cry for me, and I've never ever felt sorry for myself. And I've always thought there's a lot of people out there that have gone through more than me and are going through more than I'm going through. I gather strength from Spirit, but also from God, and I have a lot of protection from God and from Spirit, and I just have that faith, and it seems that when I'm at my lowest, that's when I'm helping and able to help others the most.
Oh, that's an interesting perspective.
Because I tend to have that empathy there for other people when I'm right in the middle of it myself. But it's always there. But I don't like to focus on me. I like to just forget about what's going on in my life and focus on other people.
Yes, you said that when we spoke prior to recording. And Nola, what do you think your gifts, your gift of clairvoyance and mediumship, and all of these years of work, what do you think all this has taught you about life, about death, and what lies beyond?
Well, it's taught me that we never really die. Our spirit never dies. Our spirit lives on, and we do go up a level when we pass away, and we do come back to visit loved ones when we pass on. But I don't believe that we should be encouraging our loved ones to be with us every day or all of the time. I feel they come when they want to or when they feel they need to comfort us, and I appreciate that. It's also taught me that our spirit guides love us and will always love us and will always see us as very, very special people and nice people. And I feel they do enjoy working through us, but we must respect them. If we start talking rubbish just to build ourselves up and to make ourselves look informed or clever, I feel it's very disrespectful to our spirit guides and to God, because in the Bible it tells you that there are people that are born with a gift, but it's the fruits of the gift that will tell you whether that gift is coming from a good source or a bad source. So if I'm sitting here doing a reading and I'm trying to break up people's marriage and just being negative and awful to people, that's coming from a bad source. If it's coming from God and your loving spirit guides, because our spirit guides are loving and they do love us and they feel that we can do no wrong, I just feel it's we've got to have respect. It's got to come from both sides, and it does. But us as readers, as clairvoyants and mediums, we do have to remember to respect, because our gift can be taken away from us without warning. Not genuine, we're frightening people, we're just causing trouble. I feel our gift can be taken away very, very quickly. And I always say it's like a 10-year turnaround. If you're still a clairvoyant or medium after 10 years, well, it looks as though you're doing the right thing. But I have seen in my time many, many clairvoyants fall by the wayside because they don't speak sense and they just seem to want to build their own ego up, you know?
Yes, I understand what you're saying. They're not using their gifts for the greater good.
That's true. They're not using their gifts for the greater good. Our gift isn't given to us to make us look good. My gift isn't to make me look good, because I'm just an ordinary woman with ordinary problems like other women. But I have a beautiful spirit guide and God working through me to help other people. And if I don't respect them, that gift will be taken away from me.
I resonate so much with your message about living from the heart, speaking authentically, living authentically, doing good with what you have. Thank you.
And it's just, and in between that, you're just living a normal life. And, you know, there's no need for me to build myself up or to have an ego about it, because I know it can be taken away from me in a flash.
Nola, how can listeners get in touch with you if they'd like to find out about a reading or learn more about you?
Well, they can get in touch with me through my phone number, and sometimes my phone seems to put itself on airplane mode. They can just message me or through Facebook, or just message me, send me a message on the phone, and my phone number is 0468 493 299. Anytime, day or night, if anyone needs to talk about their problems, I'm always here.
That is very, very kind, and I'll include the link to your Facebook page as well.
And also, I hold meditation classes here of a Saturday for people, $5 a person, and it's guided meditation. Afterwards, we have as much tea and coffee and cake and biscuits as they want. And as I tell everyone, my door is always opened.
That's a wonderful message. The last thing that I'm going to ask you is a question that, as I'm relaunching Spirit Sisters podcast, I've decided I will ask every guest at the end. And that is, what can an encounter with spirit teach us about being fully alive?
Well, just personally, my encounters that I've had with spirit makes me very, very sure that there is life after death, that even though we make our own choices in life, we don't walk alone. We've always got our guides to turn to ask for advice, to be humble. It has taught me that there's more to life than we realise, there's more to life than we can see. I just feel that it's really enhanced my belief in God. It's just made me the type of person that no matter what happens, I always trust that things will improve and turn out okay.
That's a beautiful message to end on. Nola, thank you so much for being on the Spirit Sisters podcast today.
Oh, thank you so much, Karina. It's been a lot of fun.
Oh, I'm so glad.
Thank you for listening to Spirit Sisters. If you enjoyed this conversation, please subscribe so that you won't miss an episode. And don't forget to rate and review the show. Have an experience you'd like to share with me? Get in touch at my website, karinamachado.com, or find me on Facebook at Karina Machado Author. After all, there's nothing more powerful than a story.